What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button, and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
After enthusiastic responses in the press, which received a concept Nissan Kazana, shown in 2009 at the Geneva Motor Show, the company's management made a final decision to take it as a basis and, based on it, to develop a production compact crossover. It was said, done, and in just 1 year the car, developed by an international team led by Takashi Noguchi in the European and Japanese design centers of the brand, debuted in the same Geneva. The car assembly was launched on 3 sites, 4 Europe, Australia, and New Zealand, in English Sunderland, 4 Southeast Asia, in Indonesia, in the city of Purwakarta, and in Japan, at the Apama plant in Yokosuka, for all other countries. The car, named Juke, was built on the second generation of the Renault Nissan V platform, which received its own name Nissan V on. The same platform were built such popular cars of the brand as Note and Tiida of the second generation, Micra of the fourth, and the electric car Leaf. It is curious that the word Juke, with all consonants with the Russian word bug and a certain external similarity with these hard-winged insects, has nothing to do with them. Juke is either a jukebox or a quick change of something. And in American soccer, it is also the name of a technique when a player runs with the ball, pushing the shoulders of opponents and making his way to the opponent's goal. The production car inherited from the concept developed Will Arches. The designers called such outlines bottle of Coca-Cola, coupe. Like outlines of the body, windshield, reminiscent of the glass racing helmet, and multi-level lighting technology with daytime running lights located along the upper edge of the front fenders. But the designers refused from swinging doors with rear flaps opening against the car's course. But the car received rear door handles recessed into the pillar, as on Pathfinder SUVs. Nissan Juke was equipped with several variants of 1.6-litre 4-cylinder petrol engines with power from 94 to 200 horsepower, as well as a 1.5-litre diesel engine with 110 horsepower. In pair with them could work 5- and 6-speed manual boxes, stepless transmission Xtronic, as well as 6-speed robot. It was put on sports versions of Juke Nismo Drive, front or all-wheel drive. Sales of the Juke in Russia began in 2011, and mainly in our market were presented versions with 117 horsepower gasoline 4 HR16DE, in tandem with either a manual or a variator. The model gained some popularity, but received a considerable dose of criticism for the unreliability and capriciousness of the Xtronic variator. This problem was solved in 2014 when the car underwent a small restyling, which touched the design of the radiator shell, the appearance of LED headlights and new electronic systems. In 2019, sales of the Nissan Juke were discontinued due to the appearance of the second generation of this model. Alas, the new Juke never came to Russia, but the first generation enjoys a certain demand in the secondary market, especially cars of 2014 to 2018 production years, which have already solved the problem of transmission reliability. Here we will talk about them. Immediately, it is worth recognizing that the prices for the Nissan Juke 2014 to 2018 years are kept at a very high level, especially in comparison with possible alternatives. For cars of 2014 asked from 865,000 to 1.2 million rubles, for Juke, released in 2018, from 1.8 to 2.3 million. But for this money you can buy, for example, a 3-year-old Kia Soul with a 2-litre 150 horsepower engine and a hydro-mechanical automatic. Nevertheless, there are always those who are attracted by compactness and bold design Juke. Well, it's time to see what its owners write about this car on the internet. Probably, it is difficult to find a car, the appearance of which would be evaluated so ambiguously. The range of evaluations of Nissan Juke design varies from complete ugly to unique and inimitable, and somewhere in the middle there will be evaluations like ugly, but beautiful in its ugliness. One thing remains undeniable: Juke is liked by the beautiful half of mankind. As a result, a more than significant part of the model's buyer audience has always been women, and Juke has earned a reputation not only as a city car, but also as a purely woman's car, taking the second place in the rating of ladies' models after Kia Picanto. This is confirmed by reviews, in many of which male authors write, "My wife drives the car, and I take it sometimes for trips around town." In these, it would seem, absolutely male reviews with the analysis of technical advantages and disadvantages can be found such assessments. A real favorite of girls, and they know a lot about beauty and brutality, Juke after restyling in general has become even more interesting. Our women like it, that's all, for girls it is just what they need. Of course, among the owners of Nissan Juke there are enough men, and, in fact, there is nothing shameful in driving such a car as well as Kia Picanto, Mini Hatch or even more so Audi A1. Only you should be ready that some of your neighbors in garages will curl their lips and mutter, "I'll keep silent about the design. I won't say anything about it, because what a woman likes, a man can't enjoy." Takashi Noguchi's brainchild can be called a really unusual-looking and empathetic car. Its unique appearance can be compared only with art cars, and there are no indifferent people, it is either adored or hated. Writes one of the owners in the review, and this is an absolutely accurate assessment of the situation. It is clear that among those who have bought this model, at least new, in a salon, at least on the secondary market, there are no Juke I haters, they were cut off at the stage of choice. But admirers almost never call the automobile beautiful, elegant, or harmonious. All of them emphasize on unusualness and extravagance, a car with attractive and unusual design. It is rather for a person, eternally young in soul, who loves something creative both in life and on the road. Of course, its design is for amateurs, but I personally like such boldness of designers. It is an eye-catching, standing out in the stream of design. The car attracts attention on the roads with its appearance. But the interior design, in which there is nothing particularly extravagant, is called exceptionally nice and praised for its beauty. And at the same time, for convenience and well-readable combination of devices. Alas, not everything that looks good can be called qualitative. In a lot of reviews the authors very critically describe both finishing materials of Nissan Juke interior and quality of assembly. The interior is a bit poor, plastic is hard, everything is good, except for bad quality of finishing materials, plastic is very weak, it played on doors so that it wiped off the paint, and the paint rubbed off everywhere possible, even in contact with rubbers. The rails on which the seats of the front passengers stand, peeled and rusted after 6 months of use due to lack of primer. Plastic creaks are normal. Separately note not the most resistant upholstery of seats, marked textile interior, any pollution reliably entered into the fabric. And on this occasion many owners immediately recommend to be concerned about covers, they say, after that the interior will immediately become significantly more practical. Owners have to take measures against knocks caused by some or other interior elements. In the cold on bumps rattled the cover of access to the niche for the jack, glued anti-scrapum, stopped rattling, but something still rattles in the middle rack, in the trunk. Made fasteners for shelves, removed the unpleasant noise. Another disappointment was the media head unit. On the one hand, everything seems to be normal in terms of functions, there is navigation. On the other hand, many people note that they do not like the way this navigation works and that it is much easier to hang a smartphone on the bracket. The screen is not very pleasant. What disappointed in the car is the multimedia screen, the image quality leaves much to be desired. Of course, on the one hand, the head unit has pluses. I like that it displays albums on the screen and is controlled from the steering wheel regardless of the operating system of the phone, but on the other hand, the device can for some unknown reason take and turn off, and then work again. Again, as one of the authors writes, charging for iPhone, not just charging, as soon as you plug it in, the music from this iPhone starts. What did not try, so that it does not play, all to no avail. Became just hate the same track. Very annoying thing. In general, in some reviews the authors write, I recommend replacing the stereo immediately. There are ergonomic flaws in the cabin, for example, the lack of illumination of the window elevator buttons, which passengers have to search for only by touch. Exactly the same situation with control buttons of seat heating. If you want to turn it on or off while driving, you have to touch, only to the touch. Visibility is one of the most important characteristics of any car, because it determines both safety and how you will perceive the car in different conditions. So, according to the almost consolidated opinion of the authors of reviews on the internet, visibility of Juke is in good order, and its main advantage is a review. Very good and voluminous mirrors. Even with a small driving experience, the driver will see the most hidden places on the road. In general, and racks do not interfere with anything, at least nobody writes about it, and mirrors are estimated as large, convenient and very informative. Well, and in difficult situations, for example, when maneuvering in a parking lot filled with cars, you will be helped by the system of round view if, of course, it is in your configuration. Nissan Juke 2010-20. Of course, there are some buts. For example, a number of authors mention headlights that get dirty instantly in bad weather, and, according to them, the washer helps in this situation very little. Cleaning of the windshield is not the best organized in winter. The washer simply does not cope. You pour, and all to no avail. By the way, the washer tank is so that a person of average height has to pour without looking, because to see the neck, you have to stand on a stool. But mostly such defects are perceived as annoying trifles that cannot spoil the overall impression. The only type of automatic transmission available in Russia in the Nissan Juke is the Xtronic Variator, aka CVT7, aka Jatco JF015E. And it is worth admitting, it left not the best impressions on the 2010 to 2014 cars, first of all, by unreliability and expensive repair. Owners of pre-restyling Nissan Juke, and not only massively complained about the destruction of the input shaft bearings and cones, sun gear and planetary mechanism, as well as the failure of the hydro block, and all these troubles could happen at a mileage of less than 50,000 kilometers. And all because this variator was developed including for tiny Japanese K-cars and poorly tolerated the loads typical for normal cars, even compact and subcompact class. In 2015, significant changes were made to the design of the unit, which sharply increased its reliability, but, as they say, the spoons were found, but the residue remained. So the owners write in their reviews, I do not advise to take the variator, because I have heard a lot of bad things about it, very expensive repair or even replacement. And there are spoons too, not always. Variators are very weak. We repair them for the second time at a mileage of 60,000 kilometers. The gearbox master said that these are the weakest variators existing in the nature, although someone speaks a little softer. The variator is, of course, the weakest part of these cars, but with careful use it can serve for a long time. However, reliability is not everything. These units are very demanding to driving style and conditions. The variator surprised me. With poor response and consistently high revs, acceleration does not grow linearly in accordance with the position of the gas pedal and throttle open all the way. As a result, a lot of sound and sluggish acceleration, even in sport mode. I had a hard time getting used to the box. I had to learn how to properly apply the gas pedal for smooth acceleration. The car from the first day drove kicking like a goat, wherever I went. They say everything is okay for the variator. Well, I gradually got used to not pressing the gas sharply, and the jerking became less. Worse is another thing, the variator JF015E does not like sharp acceleration, so when overtaking you will certainly have to put up with the roar of the engine. Besides, because of variator, it is not recommended to tumble, to bump into a curb, to move constantly at high speed. And if two last rules can still be fulfilled, then it is almost impossible not to tumble in winter or spring on uncleared streets with ice under snow, according to authors of reviews. And besides the variator, the impression of the car can spoil the suspension. Here, however, evaluations are not so unambiguous. Someone writes that the suspension works very well, bumps pass very softly, in a salon absolutely is not heard any extraneous noise of a suspension, directly very pleased. Someone neatly complains that the suspension, certainly, a little rigid on bumps, but in a city the car feels confident and comfortable. Someone is frankly dissatisfied. The car does not like bad roads. Every bump shakes the body, and non-standard lying policemen, when moving off them the front suspension knocks strongly, and someone tries to give some balanced assessment. I will not say that it is directly very hard, but not soft, something in the middle, but a little bit closer to hard. In any case, the authors of many reviews do not write anything about the suspension, but note its excessive rigidity among the disadvantages. In the majority of positive reviews, and there are not so many negative ones about this model, the authors clearly emphasize the urban character of the Nissan Juke. It is in the city that this car is most appropriate. Here its advantages are most fully revealed and its disadvantages are least of all felt. Firstly, compactness simplifies the search of free space in parking lots. It is convenient to park anywhere. Secondly, maneuverability and visibility. It is very convenient to drive it in yards. I am very satisfied with my purchase, fast, maneuverable. In the third, dynamics in the city speed range. Not without reason in many reviews the word quick sounds. It is enough both for overtaking and for leaving the yard to get into a stream at once. A lot of cars can leave behind itself at a traffic light at start. Quick car, it is the best for a city, quick. In a city, what is true is true. Here, however, the impression is spoiled a bit by a variator twitching in traffic jams. But in many reviews the authors note that it is better not to drive it for long distances because it is stiff and it does not go more than 110. But, perhaps, most of all, the owners are pleased with urban passability. The pluses, of course, include excellent geometric passability. City curbs are absolutely not dangerous. In principle, 180 mm of ground clearance and short overhangs do not limit the Juke's habitat to city streets, due to the ground clearance. It is easy to move off the asphalt, to the beach, to the dacha. You don't even wonder if it will pass here. Small overhangs and sufficient ground clearance allow you to drive down a country road without any problems. Assessments of the Nissan Juke's ability to drive on snow are somewhat less unambiguous. Some owners write that it is good to drive it on our roads, especially in winter time, and in general winter operation did not cause any problems. Others urge not to overestimate the capabilities of the car. Despite the fact that Juke looks like a crossover, it is elementary to get stuck on it. A little drive into the snow when leaving the parking lot, as the front wheels hang and helplessly scroll. High ground clearance allows you to overcome shallow ruts and the like, but do not forget that the car is front-wheel drive, and overestimating the possibilities, you can spend a lot of time. Well, and the third ones express themselves quite categorically: no passability in winter. In a snowy heath it just gets stuck. On a winter snow-covered city, poor passability without a full drive. However, it should be recognized that such negative assessments are quite rare, and in the majority of its owners recognize that Juke is quite good for trips around the city and short trips to the nature, however, in a limited composition. Quite in many reviews there are claims to a car body, and they concern, mainly, noise insulation. It is clear that the owner's assessment of the level of acoustic comfort is very subjective. Someone neatly notes that noise insulation could also be better, and someone chops from the shoulder, noise insulation is disgusting. I moved to Skoda Yeti and sighed. This car, though not cute, reddish, but noise insulation is such that it is possible to speak in a whisper, not like in Juke. With all subjectivity of these estimations, a number of moments are based on quite concrete facts. Well, here is such. For example, in a number of reviews the problem with rear arches is mentioned. Weak noise insulation, including because of the lack of fenders in the rear arches. You can install fenders, but there are no standard places for fastening. Before that I drove a 1999 Megane. I thought that a very noisy car, but this bug buzzes worse. Everything somehow buzzes. There are no crickets, it's just a buzz, and those who sit behind, if you drive on bad asphalt, start yelling, as they can't hear themselves. The missing rear fenders have other unpleasant consequences. In the fall, winter and spring, dirt and snow salt mush collect in the niche in front of the wheel, which threatens accelerated corrosion. The owners also note not the most successful form of plastic covers on the sills, which in combination with chubby doors leads to the fact that all the slag from under the front wheels flies to the front door. Well, and as a result, in their opinion, the bottom part of the doors is constantly in the dirt, and numerous chips appear on the paintwork. And, judging by the reviews, installation of longer mudguards only shifts the firing point closer to the rear door. Returning to the question of noise insulation, we can say that many authors in their reviews call to deal with this issue immediately after purchase. As for noise insulation, my opinion, you still need to glue the doors. It is not so costly and difficult. I made a full noise insulation at once for 27,000 rubles, and the problem of the minuses is gone. Another subject of criticism was very thin metal of body panels and insufficient torsional rigidity of the body. After parking with one side on the curb with not too frequent opening of the trunk, the rubber stop of the fifth door rubbed the paint in the notch on the bumper. It is absolutely true about the rear door. If the car stands unevenly, it skews and the alarm goes off. And here is such a situation described in one of the reviews. At the Dacia, I foolishly put the car under an apple tree, and in the morning the number of fallen apples could be counted by dents. Fortunately, the insufficient thickness of metal is somewhat compensated by rather qualitative paintwork. Nissan Juke owners are very positive about the electronic equipment of their cars. First of all, they like correct work of stabilization systems, especially in winter. During winter operation, I noticed perfectly adjusted ESP. At the right moment it intervenes in controlling the car on a slippery road and allows to correct mistakes made during maneuvering. The systems cope with all adversities and tactfully help the driver to keep an even course. The directional system is very balanced, not intervening when it doesn't need to and clearly in control when it does. Owners also consider a number of other auxiliary systems: navigation, all-round vision, blind spot monitoring and lane control. To be very useful, I will say right away that these options are not superfluous, but very useful. They have not once facilitated management and warned dangerous situations. Internal, so to speak, intelligence is developed enough, and it helps beginners. It even sees motorcyclists and warns of their approach, which I think is very cool. Not everyone thinks so, though. You can meet, for example, and such a point of view, if you fell for, oh, what it is cute, red and shiny, by without all the contraptions. They only give you a headache. For driving around the city and to the countryside in a leisurely mode, comfortable, but in a fast mode you will be twitching as if something did not happen. It is worth recognizing that such fundamentalists are a minority, and the majority of owners are quite satisfied with the saturation of the car with electronics. The main thing that a person who has put Juke on the short list of possible purchases on the secondary market should remember is that the car is very small and that it does not belong to the number of models about which they say inside is bigger than outside. The trunk volume of all-wheel drive versions is only 207 litres, front-wheel drive versions, bigger, 351 litres, and it seems that this volume is under the roof. In general, the owners write that there is a trunk, but you will take away in it only a suitcase and a small bag. It is possible to remove a false floor, and then in the formed niches you will be able to shove all sorts of trifles. In any case, in order to go on a long trip with a couple of big suitcases, rear seats will have to be folded, and the author of the only review, which describes a trip to fishing in the Volga Delta with an inflatable boat, a motor, a tent and other field stuff, notes that for such a trip he simply dismantled the rear sofa. In a huge number of reviews it is the small trunk is noted among the main disadvantages of the model, and some of their authors write that the size of the trunk was the main reason for the sale after the family grew up. And it would be half a problem if the designers sacrificed the size of the trunk in favor of spaciousness in the cabin. But no. There is not enough space in the back, it is inconvenient to get in and out, only children can sit comfortably on the back seat. The car is definitely for two people, exception, a small child or two. They can be put in the back, and their knees will not rest on the front seats. Naturally, thus about transportation in a trunk of children's strollers, bicycles, snowcats or something in this kind and speech can not go well, and adult pedal transport it is definitely possible to transport, only using a special trunk on a roof. Nissan Juke 2010 to 20 Plus, take into account that the door leading to the second row is very narrow, it's inconvenient to get into the back row. Adults are always clinging to the door trim with their shoes and the fasteners and rivets on their clothes, the lining between the door and the seats, and now everything there is scuffed and scratched. In a word, if in principle your life implies that periodically you have to take out to the Dacia not only wife and child with things and toys, but also father-in-law with mother-in-law, complete with seedlings, then be sure, Juke for such operation is not suitable at all. In reviews the owners write that it is a perfect car for 1 to 2 people for all occasions, that the driver and the front passenger feel quite at ease, that if it is not the only car in the family, the small trunk and cramped rear sofa cease to be any significant problem. But it does not cancel the fact that Juke is not suitable for the role of the only family car. As I have already said, Nissan Juke is most appropriate to use as a second car in the family, which means that its operation should not be a heavy burden on the family budget. And in this respect everything is quite good. The amount of annual transport tax for 117 horsepower version in Moscow and Street Petersburg will amount to 2,995 rubles. The cost of maintenance, 10 to 15,000 rubles, is estimated as quite acceptable. Hull insurance plus MTPL, about 50 to 56,000. But even more importantly, the owners rate the Juke as a very reliable car. In a huge number of reviews you can meet such phrases: "I have traveled on it 120,000 kilometers, there are no problems, the car has served for 6 years, there were no problems with repair, for 5.5 years I have not changed anything except oil, filters and pads, for 4 years of ownership of the car has never failed, I have traveled 50,000 kilometers, during this time there were no troubles, only routine maintenance." There is a great number of statements of this kind. So nothing ever breaks at all? No, of course not. As you know, everything that is made by man can be broken. The Nissan Juke has certain sore spots. For example, the rubber bands on the engine mount are torn, the power wiring can be corroded, because of which the battery stops receiving a charge and completely discharges. Problems with the variator are also possible, although, as already noted, after 2015 they are quite rare. But in general, I have not come across a single review that would describe the Juke, which literally exhausted its owner with constant repairs. You just need to take into account that there is one type of repair that can hit your pocket very hard. Probably you have realized that we are talking about body repairs. The author of one of the reviews describes the situation as follows: "My wife once got into an accident, crashed into the car in front of her, not badly, even the airbags did not work, and she went away quietly by herself. But the insurance company calculated the repairs at 350,000 rubles, i.e., 1/3 of the car's value. As for fuel efficiency, almost all owners are absolutely unanimous, they are more than satisfied with this parameter. In their reviews they write, as for fuel consumption, it is the ideal of dreams, city, 8L 100 km, highway, 6 to 7L 100 km. The consumption is also pleasing, even on warming up 9 liters, in summer 6-inch, a small fuel consumption is pleasing, on the highway 6 to 7 liters, in the city 8 to 10-inch, and only some grumble that 10 liters per 100 is a lot for the engine with a volume of 1.6 liters. Nevertheless, we can state that the consumption is quite consistent with what is stated in the official specifications, and that even a small volume, only 46 liters, fuel tank even in the city is enough, as a rule, for 450 kilometers. Well, and as a whole the automobile turns out to be very economical on all parameters. Before that, I had a BMW 328, and the average cost per month was much higher, 3 times, plus fines came every month. Everything is simpler with Juke, it costs 2 times less gasoline, and there are no fines at all. In conclusion, the Nissan Juke I presents a unique blend of style, performance, and practicality, making it an appealing choice for many drivers. Its distinctive design, agile handling, and compact size are compelling reasons to consider this vehicle. However, potential buyers should also weigh the drawbacks, such as limited rear space, a firm ride, and some concerns regarding fuel efficiency. Ultimately, whether the Nissan Juke I is the right fit for you will depend on your personal preferences and priorities. Take the time to assess these factors carefully before making your decision. Thank you for watching, and we hope this video has helped you in your car buying journey.